Good morning.
Good morning. It is
Bailey.
And
Malachi.
thank you.
So we're just doing this little Sunday morning class for a few weeks. And the theme of what we're doing is called Big Dreams.
Big dreams. Big dreams. Kind of like your head is huge, and what do you do at night? You have big dreams.
And for week 1, we're going to focus on Joseph's story and how his big dreams, or I guess dreams, turned into his big reality. The story of Joseph starts off, there are 3 main sections. It starts off with the pits. So Joseph...
Wait, I'm sorry. The pit? As in like the armpit?
Is in like a pit in the ground.
Oh, okay. Fair enough. Thank you.
And so Joseph starts off in the story. He's a 17-year-old boy. And he, he's the youngest of all his brothers. All his brothers are adults. They're grown up. And his father loved him. He was like the favorite child. And he had this beautiful, many-colored long coat that his father gifted to him.
You mean kind of like this coat right here?
Except imagine it with colors.
Okay, well, okay, it has some color. Keep going, Bailey.
And so one day, Joseph kind of was telling his brothers about these dreams that he was having. He's like, oh man, like I just had a dream where you guys were bowing down to me, and you're like, I'm ruling over you. That's crazy. And his brothers were like, yeah, that's crazy. But they actually like hated that. They hated him and they planned on killing him.
That's crazy.
I can't imagine my brothers wanting to kill me for something like that. So his brothers went to go throw him in an empty pit to die. Actually, one of his older brothers was planning on saving him, but before his older brother could come back to save him, his brothers sold him into slavery to a man named Potiphar, who was an Egyptian captain. And so God actually blessed him when he went into Potiphar's household. So God blessed him when he went into Potiphar's household, and he became sort of like second in command. He ran everything in the house. He was like...
He worked his way up.
Yeah, exactly. And Potiphar's wife was like, ooh, I really like you. So she was like, oh, I really like you so much. And she kept trying to like come on to him and be like, hey, like...
Let's do the deed. Let's birds and bees. So.
And then she grabbed his coat and framed him.
Like picture frame?
Like crime framed.
Yeah.
Of sleeping with her when he didn't actually do any such thing. Potiphar was mad and then threw him into prison, which brings the second part of our story.
So part 2, prison. We finished pit, now we're on to prison. So this man Joseph was in prison, right? Prison is terrible. Think back then, they didn't have no food on trays like that. It was a bunch of sweaty, just nasty, grimy. You just in a box with the, oh my goodness gracious. It was terrible. It was a terrible place. However, God blessed Joseph again to where he worked his way up, and now he's helping out the dude that's in charge and running the prison. He's the second in command again. He was just second in command at Potiphar's house. Now he's second in command in prison. This dude, he's got skill. God is blessing this man. Anyways, he finds these people. He finds the Pharaoh's cupbearer and he finds the Pharaoh's baker. Now the cupbearer, he gives him wine and stuff, the baker, he makes bread and stuff like that. That's what they do. So they had these dreams. They had these crazy dreams and they needed somebody to interpret them. It was crazy. So Joseph, he already had this power. He's like, his dreams, he could see what the dreams. I'm not sure this is what Joseph did, but he probably did this. I don't know about that for sure. But anyways, he interpreted their dreams. The cupbearer, he basically said, okay, because of your dream, I'm seeing that you're going to be restored. You're going to become the cupbearer for Pharaoh again. Because he's in prison. He was in prison, so something happened to where he's no longer the cupbearer for Pharaoh. There's a lot of spit going on. However, based on this dream, Joseph says, you know what? This dream shows me that you're going to be restored to Pharaoh's cupbearer again. However, the baker
didn't have it so hot.
The baker didn't have it so hot.
Because you bake things
The oven wasn't hot for the baker. Oh my goodness.
Well, okay. The oven is a little too hot.
Okay, Bailey, please stop. This is my section. So the baker, based on this dream, Joseph said, you know what? you're gonna be impaled. You're gonna die. I'm sorry. You're not gonna be like the cupbearer. You're not gonna be restored to be under Pharaoh. You're gonna die. That's how it's gonna go. Which is terrible to hear. Actually, I feel really bad for the baker. Now that I'm talking about it, I feel terrible. But so the cupbearer, he goes out. He gets out of prison and he goes back to Pharaoh. He becomes the cupbearer for Pharaoh again. 2 years pass by. Wait, hold on. Let me backtrack.
Joseph sitting in prison all this time, like.
Yeah. Because Joseph was like, okay, if you go back to be cupbearer, I need you to tell Pharaoh what I've done. I need you to tell Pharaoh that I've translated your dreams for you so I can get out of prison. I can get out of this place. He's like, yeah, I got you. When this happens, I got you. So the cupbearer gets out of prison, becomes the cupbearer for Pharaoh again. But he forgets to tell the Pharaoh that Joseph, is in prison. He waits 2 years. He's like, oh snap! This is dude Joseph in prison. I'm sorry, I totally forgot. Yeah, he can translate dreams. You should get him out. He waits 2 years. 2 years, really? He waits 2 years. So finally, Joseph gets out of prison. He becomes the Pharaoh's dream translator and becomes the second in command to the Pharaoh. And that brings us to palace.
So now Joseph, Pharaoh was like, okay, so obviously you know what you're talking about. Be my second in command. So Joseph is like in the palace of the Pharaoh, second in command of all of Egypt. And there were 7 years of prosperity, just as Joseph has predicted. And then 2 years into the famine, Joseph's family, they're like, man, we're kind of like starving over here in Canaan. Like, we got to go buy food from the capital. Because during these 7 years, Joseph was like amassing food in the capital because he knew it was coming. So his brothers show up and Joseph was like, oh, I know you. But they didn't recognize him.
The same brothers that had beat him up and sold him in slavery. Mm-hmm. Didn't even realize him.
And listen, Joseph was he had a plan. He had a plan for these brothers. So he goes to them and he says, he accuses them of being spies, and he's like, no, like, that's not right. And the only brother that was left behind was Benjamin, his only full brother, and the brother that wasn't born yet when he was enslaved. So he's like, no, bring your brother to me to make sure that you guys aren't spies, that you're telling the truth. But I'm going to keep one of you brothers here, just as a guarantee that you're going to come back. So they go back and they bring Benjamin. They have a feast. And when the brothers are leaving, Joseph had his little silver cup placed in Benjamin's pack. And he was like, all right, I'm going to send my right-hand man. Joseph sent his right-hand man to go catch up to the brothers as they were leaving. And it's like, whoever has a silver cup in his pack is going to be put into slavery for stealing from Joseph. And they found the cup in Benjamin's pack, and they were like, oh no. So then they had to go back, and the brothers were begging for Benjamin's life. They were like, no, if we lose our other brother, our father's gonna die. He's just an old man. He can't handle losing another son.
The pain will hurt his heart.
Exactly.
His little bit of your heart.
Exactly. And at this, Joseph was like, I can't. I gotta let him know what's going on. And at this, he revealed his identity.
He revealed it?
He revealed it.
He was like, hey yo, it's me, Joseph. Player, what? Could you imagine his brother? His brother was like, player, ain't you dead? Ain't you? Oh my goodness gracious, that's crazy. So yeah.
That must have been awkward, Hey, we sold you into slavery.
It's crazy.
But, I mean, Joseph saw the best of it. He was like, God sent me ahead of you to bring prosperity to these lands. He saw the best of it.
He did. And so basically, once he revealed himself, he brought all of his family up next to a place next to Egypt. It's called Goshen. Goshen was a cool place. He brought all of his family. I think there was like 70 people in total that got brought up to Goshen, and they just thrived there. And his number, it just grew exponentially. Kind of like you, when you were a baby, you just grew exponentially. So they grew exponentially. And what's funny about that is because God had this plan all along. Yeah, Joseph had a very difficult life. I mean, he was cool. He was very talented. He could see dreams. He had big dreams. But his brothers didn't really like that. And so because of that, they beat him up and they sold him to slavery. Then he got out of slavery. He's in second command. But then this Potiphar's wife throws him in jail basically. So he's in jail. He goes from being beaten to slavery to being thrown in prison. And now he's in the palace. He's in Pharaoh's palace. And God saw this all along because eventually Joseph's family, the one that's growing exponentially, is the one that's going to end up having King David. As you know, he wrote the book of Psalms. And it's also going to be the family that has Jesus. So this family, God has blessed it. He's seen this whole thing going all along. He's fulfilling his own dreams.
So now we just have a few questions.
Just a couple questions.
Respond
in the chat section what your answers are to the question if you feel like sharing. Okay, question number 1. Has God ever given you a dream? Now, I know that sounds kind of weird, but has God ever given you a dream? If so, how is it like or unlike Joseph's dream? I'll give you time to respond.
What about you, Malachi?
Has God ever given me a dream? I wouldn't say to the extent of Joseph's dreams. This man, he said the wheat was just bound down to his wheat. I've never had a dream like that. That's crazy.
My dreams are kind of weird, just often.
Yeah. We had a dream. We were talking about a dream earlier.
Yeah.
How we flew. I flew in my dream. I don't think that's the same as Joseph's dream. But you're writing right now. Second question.
Have you ever experienced past trials or hardships that have led you to a much better place, physically or spiritually?
Interesting. What about you, Bailey?
I feel like sometimes there are rough patches in my life, or anybody's life, that I would go to the youth group or to church to sort of and search for answers or comfort. And in, having all these people here as a church family,
Yeah.
it helps. And then you look to God for answers more and more.
This is true. Yeah. I feel that. I think with me, like, athletically, obviously track isn't the easiest thing to do. So there's hard practices and you're like, oh gosh, why am I doing this? And so you get to the meets, so you do all this practicing and then you get to the meets. And for me, since I am like religious, I pray before my races. And you always hear people say like prayer is so powerful and stuff like that. But until it really happens, you don't get it. So I was kind of that person up until like last year. And so I practiced so much and all this praying, oh my goodness gracious, practices were so hard. But then I got to the state meet and I was praying over and over and over again. Like I was so nervous, but I was still praying. I still had faith. I was like, God, whatever your will, let it be done. But I was like, but it would be nice to win, some state championships. And it was crazy because I wasn't seeded to go to win the championship in one of the races. But I was like, I want this championship. But I'm going to trust you either way. And I got out and won that mug. So it was crazy. So that kind of confirmed that prayer is very powerful. So spiritually, that kind of did it for me.
Awesome.
Question number 3. In what ways does God's blessings look different than we might think or imagine? I'm going to repeat that one more time. In what ways does God's blessings look different than we might think or imagine? Right in the chat section. Interesting. What are you thinking, Bailey?
It might also be a matter of like wanting. You want things that like you want. And sometimes you find out that, what's best for you
wasn't what you wanted. This is true. I feel that. Are you finished typing? All right, moving on. So, a couple major points to think about going on. So, God's purpose shapes your dreams, and God's dreams shape your purpose. So, what that means is, you can have big dreams, but ultimately, God's dreams are going to prevail. And you can just hope and pray that your dreams are in line with His.
And to find out if your dreams align, that's why we have, reading the Bible, growing closer to God to figure that out.
Yes. Point number 2.
And this is sort of our last major point.
This one kind of hits deep.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
This one's deep.
So don't be surprised if God's dreams cause others to resent you because they don't see what God sees. We've seen that in the Bible a lot of how God sees the really big picture. You know, he'll lead the Israelites into different sorts of situations that they might not think would be, they're like, oh, why is this happening? Like, this is awful. But, you know, God has his will and he knows what's best for literally everyone.
Yeah. I mean, even with Joseph's brothers, they didn't like the fact that he was the favorite and that God was blessing him and blessing him in these dreams. And they resented Joseph because of that. But, you know, that's going to be the case in your life. People aren't going to get what you see. They aren't going to get what God does in your life. But you just got to keep doing what you're doing. Keep doing what God wants you to do, what he has chosen you to do. And that's about it. Bailey, it's been nice talking to you. Social distance high five. Thank you.
Have an excellent day.
Have a great day. Jesus loves you.
And we do too.
And we do too.